In the frozen wilds of Siberia, a respected Russian army commander vanished without a trace in 2021. For 4 years, his disappearance sat unsolved, until a remote cabin deep in the woods revealed the truth. Investigators found his skeletal remains seated at a table set for two. And the second seat? It carried a story no one was prepared to hear. Before we begin this chilling case, make sure to like this video, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our true crime mysteries. Let's get into today's story. In early October of 2021, the Russian armed forces logged the disappearance of one of their most respected officers, Commander Yuri Voronov, a man known for a spotless record, strict discipline, and an intimidating calmness that made even junior officers stand straighter when he walked by. He was last seen leaving a regional military base in the Krasnoyarsk Krai, a vast stretch of Siberian wilderness where the land seemed to swallow sound, light, and sometimes people. The official report said he left alone. Unofficial whispers said otherwise. Voronov had been dealing with something private, something he never disclosed. Soldiers noticed he'd begun taking solitary drives into the forest after his shifts. No escorts, no explanations. On October 17, 2021, he drove out again. He never returned. His vehicle was never located. His communication devices went silent. And so did every lead. To the military, it was an embarrassment. To the media, it was a scandal. To his family, it was a nightmare with no ending. 4 years passed. The case went from headline-breaking news to nothing more than a cold file gathering dust in a government archive. No one expected answers anymore. Until a call came from a remote hunting region, hundreds of kilometers from where Yuri had vanished. A call that would finally reveal his fate. A call that would raise more questions than answers. On a frigid morning in January 2025, 2 trappers, brothers named Alexei and Nikolai Zorin, were following wolf tracks deep into the northern Siberian brush. Snow buried everything in heavy sheets, but both men were experienced woodsmen. They knew the land, and they knew when something didn't belong. About 6 kilometers off their usual route, they noticed something strange, a thin line of smoke rising between the trees. No one lived that far out. No hunters passed through in years. And smoke meant fire, or someone living there. They followed the trail cautiously. Soon, the brothers emerged into a clearing and found a small, weather-beaten wooden cabin. It was old, older than both of them. The roof sagged, the windows were frosted. But the smoke was real, faint and curling from the chimney, as if the fire had burned low recently. The Zorin brothers circled the cabin. No footprints in the snow. No tire tracks. No sign of movement. Yet, inside, something was burning. Alexei pushed the creaking door open. What they found made them run until their lungs felt like they would burst. Inside the cabin, at a wooden table covered in dust and cobwebs, sat a skeleton, upright, still in uniform, head slightly bowed, hands resting on the table as if waiting for something or someone. But that was not the most disturbing part. The table had been set for 2. 2 chairs. 2 plates. 2 metal cups. 2 portions of dried rations, long untouched. The second chair was pulled out slightly, as if the invisible guest was meant to sit any moment. The brothers fled. Hours later, the police and military investigators arrived. They were horrified, but unlike the trappers, they noticed something else, a rusted name tag, half buried under the skeletal figure's collar. It read, Voronov, Yuri M. Commander. Missing since 2021. His remains had been found. At least, that's what they thought. The discovery of Commander Yuri Voronov sparked a national investigation. The Russian Ministry of Defense dispatched a specialized forensic team, including pathologists, military police, and intelligence officers. The forest clearing became a sealed crime scene. But nothing about the cabin made sense. 1. How did no one find it in 4 years? It wasn't on any maps. It wasn't a registered structure. It stood too far from any access point, almost intentionally hidden. 2. Why was the fire still smoldering? Skeletons don't stoke fires. Someone had been there recently. 3. Why the table for 2? Investigators argued. Was someone meeting him? Feeding him? Keeping him hostage? 4. Why was the commander seated upright? A body left 4 years would not remain posed unless someone manipulated it. 5. And most disturbing, why were his clothes intact? Time destroys fabric. Animals disturb remains. But Voronov looked untouched, as if the forest respected him or feared the cabin. The investigators spent 2 days examining the interior. Every object was old. Dust coated the shelves, the floors, even the plates. Except one thing. A diary. Leather-bound. Slightly burned at the edges. Newer than everything else. It lay under the table, on the second chair. The chair for the missing guest. The diary belonged to someone named E.S. There was no full name written anywhere. But the writing was neat, concise. And the entries were chilling. The earliest entry was dated November 2021, 1 month after Commander Voronov had vanished. Entry number 1. The man refuses to speak. He won't tell me why he left his post. But he knows who I am. He recognized me the moment I entered the cabin. Entry number 4. He tries to leave. Every night he packs. Every morning he is still here. The forest won't let him go. Entry number 7. He sits at the table and stares at the second plate, as if waiting for someone else. Someone I can't see. Entry number 11. He asked me today if the war was over. I told him there was no war. He laughed for a long time. Then he cried. Entry number 16. Final. He stopped breathing last night. I placed him at the table so he would not be alone. I lit the fire for him. I will not return. The last entry was dated February 2022, 3 years before the discovery. Whoever E.S. was, they had disappeared just as mysteriously as the commander. The only question was, how did Yuri really die? And where was the other person now? Forensic teams worked for days analyzing the skeletal remains. Though decayed, some clues survived. 1. Cause of death, unknown. No fractures. No bullet wounds. No signs of restraint. He hadn't been attacked, at least violently. 2. Clothing fibers were protected. The cabin was cold, dry, sealed from animals. It preserved what nature would have destroyed. 3. A strange substance was found on his boots. A rare type of industrial lubricant used on old Soviet-era weapons crates stored in underground bunkers. Investigators froze. Underground bunkers? In this region? None were on record. Unless someone was using one secretly. But the most shocking finding was this. DNA from a second person was found on Yuri's collar. Not from the diary author. Not from the trappers. Not from any soldier on file. Someone else had been with him. Someone who stayed close to him. Someone still out there. Locals around the region began reporting strange events after the discovery. A figure wandering the tree line at dusk. Deep footprints appearing overnight and vanishing by morning. A voice humming old military songs from the darkness. The cabin chimney smoking again even after investigators had sealed it. But the most disturbing report came from Alexei Zorin, the trapper who first found the cabin. He told officers, "I went back one night. I don't know why. Maybe to prove it wasn't a nightmare. The cabin was dark, but the door was open, and someone was sitting in the second chair." "What do you mean, someone?" the officer asked. Alexei swallowed hard. "I mean, someone sitting across from the commander's skeleton." They searched the area. They found nothing. But the second chair had been moved, pulled back, slightly turned, as if someone had just stood up from it. After months of investigation, the ministry quietly closed the case. But one unofficial internal report was leaked to a journalist. It stated, Commander Yuri Voronov did not die alone. He was living in the cabin with a second individual who remained with him until the end. This individual is still unaccounted for. No name, no motive, no explanation. Only one chilling line. The table was set for 2 until the very last day. To this day, no one knows who ES was, how the commander arrived at the cabin, or why he stayed for nearly a year before dying. But hunters in the region still report hearing footsteps around that cabin. And sometimes, they see smoke rising from the chimney. As investigators packed up and the forest reclaimed its silence, one thing remained chillingly clear. Commander Yuri Voronov did not die alone. Someone shared that cabin with him. Someone set that table for 2. And someone walked away without ever being found. Whether they were a friend, a foe, or a ghost from his past, nobody knows. To this day, hunters still report seeing smoke rise from the chimney, long after the cabin was sealed. And deep in the Siberian night, some claim to hear footsteps circling the clearing, slow, steady, and patient, as if someone is still waiting.